It's already over. And somebody just walked out of that courthouse hallway with a folder under her arm, a smirk on her face, and enough silence on her tongue to end 3 careers if she ever decides to open her mouth. No press run. No apology tour. No emotional live stream at 3 in the morning. Just Remy Ma, wife on paper, mother of his children, still legally attached to Papoose, watching Claressa Shields, the 2-time undisputed Olympic gold $8 million boxing champion, walk around the internet calling her husband my man, like the marriage certificate on file in the state of New York is a suggestion instead of a document. And here is what everybody is missing. This is not a love triangle. This is not a girlfriend versus a wife. This is a woman with the belts on the outside going to war with a woman who still holds the deed on the inside. And the man in the middle is not the prize. He is the pawn. Everything you have been watching, everything you have been arguing about in the comments, everything you thought the story was, it has been framed around the wrong question the entire time. The question is not who Papoose loves. The question is who Papoose belongs to on paper. And when we get to the paperwork breakdown, and I promise you we are getting there, because that is the moment this whole thing collapses, you are going to understand why Remy Ma has not raised her voice one single time. She does not have to. The state is doing it for her. 2 timelines are running at the same time right now. The one Claressa is broadcasting, and the one Remy is quietly letting expire on its own. And they are not the same story. They were never the same story. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Let me set the table properly, because I need everybody in the same room before we start opening drawers. Remy Ma, born Reminisce Mackey, married Papoose, born Shamil Mackey, in 2016. That is not a tabloid claim. That is public record. That is the state of New York. That is a paper trail with a date on it. And more importantly, that paper trail has never been publicly reversed. As of everything the public has been shown, that divorce is not finalized, not signed, not sealed, not filed away in some quiet county clerk's office in the outer boroughs. Which means every single time Claressa Shields, the greatest female boxer alive, opens her mouth and calls Papoose my man, and she has been doing it consistently in interviews, on live streams, on The Breakfast Club, on her own social media. There is a woman with a signed certificate somewhere in Westchester quietly saying, "Ma'am." Actually. Now let me be clear about the stakes here, because this is where people are getting it twisted. The stakes are not romantic. This is not about who gets the man. Claressa Shields does not need Papoose to be famous. She has the medals. She has the belts. She has the reported $8 million deal. She has a documentary. She has a resume that 99% of male boxers alive today do not have. This woman is not chasing clout. So then what is she chasing? That is the question. That is the itch. That is the thing that makes this story unavoidable. Because when a woman with everything on her own accomplishment sheet starts moving loud, moving fast, and moving public with a man who is still legally attached to somebody else, that is not romance. That is a campaign. And every campaign has a strategist. And every strategist has a deadline, which means somewhere, quietly, off camera, there's a clock ticking, and only Claressa's inner circle actually knows what time it is set to go off. Meanwhile, on the other side of this triangle, Remy Ma is doing the exact opposite of everything Claressa is doing. She is not begging. She is not spiraling. She is not making tearful posts. She is not going on any woman's podcast to tell her side. She is moving like somebody who already read the last page of the book, closed it, put it back on the shelf, and is now watching everybody else fight over who gets to read the first chapter. That is not sadness. That is not defeat. That is not she has moved on. That is strategy. And in a mess like this, strategy is scarier than shade every single time. So the question hanging over this entire story, the one nobody is asking loud enough, is simple. If Remy really is the loser here, why is she the calmest person on the internet right now? Now let me walk you through what the surface actually shows, because before we get into the deep stuff, the visible stuff already tells a story. Let's rewind to the moment this whole thing detonated. It happened on a live stream that, honestly, nobody was really watching. A random comment section. A quiet corner of the internet. And Remy Ma, casually, almost like she was answering what she had for lunch, said 7 words. People would cry if they knew the truth. That is it. That is the whole detonator. No name dropping. No screenshot. No caption. No follow-up post. No swipe up. No podcast appearance to expand on it. Just that one sentence, spoken with a shrug, delivered with a smile, and then she kept moving. And within 12 hours, that clip was on every gossip page in America. That is surface evidence piece number 1. And it is the most powerful piece in the entire video because it costs Remy Ma nothing. She did not have to write a diss track. She did not have to sit down with Angie Martinez. She did not have to type out a paragraph. She dropped a match into a room full of gasoline and walked out without looking back to see if it caught. That is not the behavior of a woman who lost. That is the behavior of a woman who knows something you do not know and is willing to sit on that information for as long as it takes. Surface evidence piece number 2. Papoose himself, on video, publicly, pointing at Claressa's stomach and talking about a huge announcement. Balloons, champagne, confetti, the whole nine. And Claressa is standing right next to him, belly a little softer than her boxing weight, smiling like she has the sonogram folded up in her jacket pocket. Every gossip account on the internet went into full detective mode within a matter of hours. Pregnancy watch, baby watch, timeline watch. And Claressa did not correct any of it. She let it run. She let the theories build. She let the internet do the announcement work for her, which is exactly what a strategist does. You never announce the news yourself if you can get the crowd to announce it for you. Surface evidence piece number 3. The Van Cleef bracelet moment. Claressa posted a Van Cleef bracelet that Papoose reportedly bought her. It was cute. It was expensive. It was a type of look what my man got me post that fan pages eat for breakfast. And it worked. For about 48 hours. Then Remy Ma posted her own wrist. Multiple Van Cleefs. Stacked. No caption. No name drop. No shade. Just the wrist. And every gossip account on the internet read that post the exact same way, as a warning shot. Because there are only 2 ways to read that image. Either Remy is buying her own, which means her bag is deeper than the narrative suggests, or somebody is still buying it for her. Either interpretation collapses the fantasy Claressa was building. Surface evidence piece number 4. The eggs. And I know how that sounds. But stay with me. There is a viral clip in which a woman playfully asks Papoose how he likes his eggs. Before Papoose can even answer, Claressa jumps in and says, "Scramble hard. I know exactly how he likes his eggs." Now, on the surface, that is playful. On the surface, that is cute girlfriend energy. But watch it again with the sound off. Watch her face. Watch her body language. That is not playful. That is territorial. That is a woman planting a flag on a very small, very personal, very specific piece of information, and doing it in a room where the whole internet is watching. That is not love. That is a claim of ownership performed for an audience. And the audience clocked it. Every one of these 4 surface moments points at the same conclusion. Claressa is building a case in public. Remy is not defending against it. And when a defendant refuses to defend, one of 2 things is true. Either she has already lost, or she has already won, and she is just waiting for the room to catch up. And oh, do I have more for you. I hope Team Claressa is sitting down, because the next layer of this story is where the fantasy really starts to crack. Everything I just walked you through was the visible layer. The stuff you can find on any gossip page. The stuff every reaction channel has already talked about. But the reason this channel exists, the reason you clicked this video and not the other 12 about this same story, is because we are about to walk into the cultural evidence next. The stuff other channels are scared to say out loud. The reactions from inside the industry. The receipts other people are ignoring. The names that keep showing up in the corners of this story that nobody wants to say into a microphone. So if you thought the eggs and the bracelet were bad, take a deep breath. Because we're just getting warmed up. And what is coming next is the part that flips this whole thing on its head. Let's get into the cultural layer. Because this is where the story stops being a gossip item and starts being a mirror of something much bigger. Cultural evidence piece number 1. Claressa's own words about her opposition. She reportedly said out loud in her own voice that people would be crying and punching the steering wheel when she got pregnant. Read that back to yourself. That is not a woman celebrating a baby. That is not a woman celebrating a family. That is a woman celebrating a win over an opponent she has never officially named. Because if this is really a happy pregnancy in a healthy relationship, why is the emotional payoff other people's pain? That framing tells you everything. Claressa is not framing this as motherhood. She is framing it as victory. She is framing it as a scoreboard. And on that scoreboard, somebody else has to be losing for her to be winning. And who is the only other woman in this equation? Cultural evidence piece number 2. The submissive line. Claressa said, and I quote from reported interviews, I may have the muscles, and I may know how to fight, but I'm very submissive to my man. Submissive. That is the word. Chosen deliberately. Placed carefully. Delivered publicly. Now think about who that word is for. It is not for Papoose. He already knows what she is like in private. So who is that word actually aimed at? It is aimed at the audience. And more specifically, it is aimed at Remy Ma. Because Remy Ma has never been sold to the public as the submissive one. Remy Ma is the ride or die. Remy Ma is the equal. Remy Ma is the woman who did her own prison bid and came home to a husband who did his own prison bid. Remy Ma is the meet me at my level partner. That is the entire brand of Papoose and Remy for the last decade. Two heavyweights, side by side, matching each other bar for bar. So when Claressa drops submissive, she is not describing herself. She is rewriting the pitch. She is saying, you had the warrior. He wants peace now. You had the equal. He wants the softer version now. That is not a description. That is a repositioning. Cultural evidence piece number 3. Winter Blanco's intervention. Winter Blanco jumped into the conversation and made the argument that people always say they want to see black love until it is actually in front of them. And a lot of Claressa's supporters co-signed that. They said, stop attacking her for wanting a family with her man. And on paper, that argument holds. On paper, black love is beautiful. On paper, we should be defending it. But here is the counter-argument I have to make, and I have to make it fairly. Real black love does not usually come with a girlfriend loudly announcing pregnancy plans, while the wife is still legally in the picture. Real black love does not need to be defended in the comment section every 7 days against random strangers. Real love is not that loud. Real love just stand there. And I want to be fair to Claressa here, because I know some of her fans are going to say I am being unfair. I hear you. Wanting a family is not a crime. Being in love is not a crime. But the timeline is the timeline. And the timeline says the man is not legally free. That is not shade. That is a filing status. Cultural evidence piece number 4. The industry silence around Papoose himself. Have you noticed how quiet Papoose has been about Remy this entire time? Not defensive. Not dismissive. Not clarifying. Just quiet. Ask yourself why. A man who is fully done with his wife would say it. He would clear it up in an interview. He would sign the papers with a smile and celebrate publicly. But when a man refuses to publicly close a chapter, refuses to sign, refuses to speak, refuses to cut the tie, that is not a man who has moved on. That is a man who left the back door cracked. And any woman who has ever been on the girlfriend side of that scenario already knows exactly what that back door means. Cultural evidence piece number 5. The come-up comment. Remy allegedly called Claressa a come-up. And that word, in hip-hop culture, is a specific accusation. It is not just shade. It is a reframe. It is saying out loud that Claressa is benefiting from being with Papoose, using his name, riding his visibility, building her platform off his position in the culture. Now think about how absurd that reframe is on its face. Claressa Shields is one of the greatest boxers alive. She does not need Papoose to be famous. So why would Remy use that word? Because Remy is not attacking Claressa's resume. She is attacking Claressa's narrative. She is quietly reminding everybody who was there before the champion arrived. And once that framing is planted in the audience's mind, every romantic post Claressa makes from here forward reads a little differently. Every my man caption, every submissive line, every baby comment, all of it now filtered through the lens of come up. That is not a diss. That is a rewrite of the entire relationship's public perception. Done with one word. And the internet ran with it. That is what makes this cultural layer so devastating. Because on the surface, Claressa is winning the noise war. She is louder. She is more visible. She is the one on his arm in the pictures. But underneath the surface, in the corners where the real conversations happen, Remy is winning the narrative war without saying more than a sentence at a time. And now we have to talk about why. Because the reason Remy can afford to be this quiet is not personal. It is not emotional. It is not because she is the bigger person. That framing is too small. The real reason Remy is this calm, the reason she is this confident, this unbothered, this patient, has nothing to do with feelings and everything to do with the machine underneath all of this. So let me shift gears now. Because everything we have talked about so far has been about people. And that is the small version of this story. The big version of this story is about paperwork. And paperwork does not lose. Here is the pattern interrupt. Forget the eggs. Forget the bracelets. Forget the birthday plans and the sonogram theories and the submissive quotes. Put all of that in a box on the shelf for a second and follow me somewhere the other reaction channels are not brave enough to go. Because this entire story, at its foundation, is not a romance story. It is a business story. It is a systemic story. It is a story about how the machinery of celebrity marriage, publishing, and industry positioning actually works when nobody is looking at it directly. Let me walk you through 3 separate systemic angles that all lead to the same conclusion. And by the time I am done, you are going to see this entire situation through a completely different lens. Systemic angle number 1, the value of an unsigned divorce. When a divorce is not signed, it is not a legal accident. It is a legal choice. And in high-visibility celebrity marriages, that choice is almost always financial before it is emotional. Think about what a marriage certificate actually is in the eyes of the industry. It is not a romantic document. It is a business partnership. It is joint assets. It is shared publishing considerations. It is intertwined tax filings. It is health insurance. It is legal next of kin authority. It is control over how each partner's estate is managed. And most importantly, in hip-hop, it is protection against certain types of business exposure that only a legally documented spouse can shield you from. So when a man like Papoose refuses to publicly finalize a divorce, that is not laziness. That is not indecision. That is not the paperwork being in progress for years on end. That is a deliberate business posture. Because as long as that document is not signed, Remy still holds legal claims and legal protections that Claressa, no matter how loud she gets, does not have and cannot get. Girlfriend status carries 0 legal weight. Wife status carries every legal weight. And Remy Ma, quietly, is still the wife. Systemic angle number 2, the reputational risk assessment inside Claressa's own team. Claressa Shields is not just a girlfriend on Instagram. She is a corporate asset. She has a reported $8 million deal. She has sponsors. She has promoters. She has boxing management. She has documentary producers. She has podcast networks lining up around her. Every single one of those business relationships has a legal and reputational risk profile attached to it. And every single one of those business relationships is right now, quietly, doing an internal risk assessment on this exact situation. Because if Claressa announces a baby, and it turns out the timeline is not clean, meaning the pregnancy overlaps with a period when the marriage was still legally active, that is not a personal PR problem. That is a business problem. Sponsors ask questions. Promoters reroute press cycles. Interview requests shift tone. Headlines that were supposed to be about her next fight become headlines about whose husband she was allegedly with. And the woman with the $8 million deal suddenly has a corporate crisis on her hands that no boxing title can fix. Which is exactly why, if you watch Claressa's posting behavior over the last few months carefully, you can see the urgency in it. It is not the pace of a woman who is secure. It is the pace of a woman whose team knows a clock is ticking and is trying to lock in the fairy tale version of the story before the paperwork version of the story can catch up. Systemic angle number 3, the media ecosystem's addiction to this specific triangle. This story is not staying in the news because it is important. It is staying in the news because it is profitable. Gossip channels, blog sites, podcast networks, reaction YouTubers, every single tier of the digital media economy has figured out that this triangle generates traffic like almost nothing else in urban entertainment right now. So there is a manufactured element here that nobody is being honest about. Every time this story feels like it is about to die, somebody in the ecosystem pokes it back to life. Because the pokes generate views, and the views generate revenue. And the revenue keeps the machinery of this story running long past the point where a normal celebrity relationship story would have burned out. Which means Remy Ma and Claressa Shields are not just navigating a personal situation. They are navigating a media ecosystem that has a financial incentive to keep the situation unresolved for as long as possible. That is why the story keeps getting recycled. That is why every small comment turns into a headline. That is why Remy's 7-word sentence became a 2-week news cycle. Because the internet, structurally, does not want this to end. It wants it to loop. And the woman who understands that loop the best is the woman who wins. Now stack those 3 systemic angles on top of each other and look at the picture. You have a wife who cannot be legally displaced because a document isn't signed. You have a girlfriend whose corporate ecosystem cannot survive a messy timeline reveal. And you have a media environment that is financially incentivized to drag this out as long as possible. In that environment, who has the advantage? The one who does not have to speak. The one who is not carrying the reputational risk. The one who does not need this story to end. Which is exactly why Remy is smiling. She is not the underdog in this story. She is the house. And in this game, the house does not lose. It just waits. Now let me hit you with the truth bomb this entire video has been building toward. And I want you to sit with this, because it is going to reframe everything you have watched so far. What if Papoose already knows? What if that 7-word sentence Remy dropped, people would cry if they knew the truth, was never a warning to Claressa? What if it was never even about Claressa? What if that sentence was a private message, wrapped in a public quote, aimed with surgical precision directly at Papoose himself? What if Remy is not warning the girlfriend at all? She is warning the husband. Baby, I know. I have not said it yet, but I know. And every day you spend playing house with somebody else is a day I am building the case. Now think about how much sense that reading makes when you hold it up against everything we have covered. It explains the calm. It explains the smile. It explains the confidence. It explains why she is not fighting for him, because she does not need to fight for him. She is already holding the truth like a receipt folded in her back pocket. And she is letting him sit with a very real possibility that on any given Tuesday, on any given interview, on any given live stream, she might reach into that pocket and put the receipt on the table. That is not the behavior of a wife who lost. That is the behavior of a wife who is architecting an ending on her own timeline. And if that reading is correct, and I want to be responsible here and say clearly this is my analysis. This is what I think is happening based on how Remy is moving. This has not been confirmed by anyone involved. But if that reading is correct, then this story is not what anybody thinks it is. Papoose is not the prize in this triangle. He is the pawn. He is not being fought over. He is being played in completely opposite ways by two different women. Claressa is playing him publicly, locking him into a fairy tale in front of an audience so large that backing out of it becomes socially impossible for him. Remy is playing him privately, letting him wake up every single morning with the quiet, uncomfortable knowledge that she still has the pen, she still has the paper, and she has not made her move yet. And Papoose is out here celebrating birthdays and pointing at stomachs, thinking he is the king of the board, not realizing he is the piece everybody else is moving. That is the truth bomb. That is the reveal. This was never a story about who Papoose wanted. It was always a story about who was moving him. And when the internet finally sees this the way I am laying it out for you right now, the reaction is not going to be a clean opinion. It is going to be the biggest reset in celebrity gossip we have seen in years. Because there is no cleaner storyline than the wife knew all along. There is no bigger reveal than we were watching the wrong woman the entire time. And every clue Remy has dropped, the 7 words, the smile, the bracelets, the come-up comment, the refusal to defend herself, has been planting that exact seed for months. Slowly, deliberately, without ever raising her voice above conversational volume. She has let the internet do her work for her. She has let the audience become her lawyer, her jury, and her PR team. That is not a wife falling apart on the timeline. That is a wife who has been running a psychological operation in plain sight, and nobody had the pattern recognition to see it until right now. And that is why, at the end of this entire mess, the person still standing is the one who never had to raise her voice. Remy Ma is winning this story, and she is winning it in the way she has always won every fight she has ever been in, offbeat, off camera, and off the timing everybody expected. That is who Remy is. That is who she has always been. Every time somebody counted her out, she came back with something specific, something surgical, something that hit right when the room stopped expecting it. She did it with the bar work when people said her flow was outdated. She did it when she came home from prison and rebuilt her entire brand from scratch. She did it when the industry tried to move on without her. And she is doing it right now, in real time, in a fight everybody thought she was losing. And she is winning it without throwing a single public punch. That is discipline. That is the kind of long game intelligence you cannot fake and you cannot buy. And I want to be specific about why she wins, because I do not want to leave this as a vibe. She wins because she understood, before anybody else in this story, that in the age of the internet you do not have to speak. You just have to wait. Because the truth does not disappear. It delays. And when it comes back with interest. Meanwhile, look at the contrast on the other side. Claressa Shields is one of the most accomplished athletes of her generation. And I want to say clearly, nothing I have said in this video is a shot at her boxing resume. That is untouchable. That is real. That is documented. But the relationship narrative she is building, the volume she is turning up, the pace she is moving at, the ownership language she is escalating. All of it is the behavior of a woman who is trying to prove something the paperwork will not let her prove yet. And when a woman has to keep proving a relationship publicly, it is almost always because the receipts are not matching the story quietly. Remy does not have to prove anything. The state of New York is doing the proving for her. One woman is making noise. The other one owns the deed. And in the long run, deeds always outlast noise. Every single time. That is the contrast one-liner. That is the whole story in one breath. And if you have made it to this point in the video, I need you to hear me clearly. The reason I have walked you through this the way I have is because I want you to see the pattern before the internet catches up to it. When the next domino falls, when the truth Remy has been hinting at finally walks into the room, I do not want you to be shocked. I want you to remember this video. I want you to remember that we sat here and read the field before it played out. Because that is what this channel is for. Not reaction. Not gossip. Pattern recognition. The right person is still standing. The right person is still winning. The right person did not have to say a word to make that true. And that is the resolution that this whole story has been begging for, whether the internet was ready to hear it or not. But do not get comfortable, because this is only the start. And I mean that literally. Two very specific things are about to happen in this story, and I need you subscribed for both of them. Because when they hit, you are going to want the breakdown before the rest of the internet even wakes up to what it means. The first thing is the pregnancy announcement. Whether it is next week, next month, or already sitting drafted in somebody's phone, that announcement is coming. And when it drops, it is not going to be received as a happy family moment. It is going to be received as evidence. Every gossip page, every fan account, every reaction channel is going to pull dates, pull interviews, pull flight logs, pull Christmas photos, pull court records, pull every single quote Claressa has ever made about babies and Papoose. And they're going to build a full public timeline down to the week. And the reason they're going to do that is because Remy handed them the shovel with one 7-word sentence. The second thing is Remy's response. When Remy finally speaks, and I do believe she will speak, it is not going to be a rant. It is not going to be a subtweet. It is not going to be a 2-hour podcast episode. It is going to be one thing, one document, one photo, one date, one number. And that one thing is going to hit like a knockout punch that nobody saw being loaded. Because that is how Remy fights. So subscribe right now, hit the bell, turn on notifications, because when either of these dominoes falls, we are the first channel breaking it down with the receipt stacked and the timeline pinned. And before you click off, click the video I have queued up right there next. Because there is another name floating around the edges of this story that nobody is saying loud enough yet. An industry figure whose contract dealings quietly connect to two of the main players you just heard about. And when I show you the paper trail on that connection, you're going to understand why this triangle was never really a triangle to begin with. It is a square. And the fourth corner has been sitting in plain sight the entire time. Click it. Watch it. Then come back here when the next domino drops. Peace.